My name is Corinne Westbrook, and I'm 67 years old. For most of my life, I believed that family was everything. That belief shattered on a cold November evening in my daughter's dining room in Naperville, Illinois. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration. My granddaughter Bethany had just announced her engagement to her boyfriend of 3 years, Derek. The whole family had gathered. My daughter Patricia and her husband Glenn, my son Marcus with his wife Yolanda, and all 4 of my grandchildren. The dining room was warm with the smell of roasted chicken and the sound of laughter. I had brought my famous apple pie, the one my mother taught me to make in our kitchen in rural Nebraska back when I was just a girl. My hands aren't as steady as they used to be. Arthritis has claimed some of their grace, but I can still crimp a pie crust better than anyone I know. We were halfway through dinner when I needed to get my reading glasses to see the photo of the engagement ring Bethany wanted to show me. My purse was hanging on the back of my chair, a brown leather bag I'd had for 5 years. I reached inside, fumbling past my wallet, tissues, and the little pill organizer I carried everywhere. My fingers searched for my glasses case, but something felt wrong. The zippered compartment where I always kept my credit card was open. I distinctly remembered zipping it closed before I left home. I always did. It was a habit formed over decades of careful living. I pulled out my wallet and checked. My driver's license was there. My insurance cards, a photo of my late husband Warren taken 20 years ago at Yellowstone, but the credit card slot was empty. My heart began to beat faster. I tried to stay calm, telling myself I must have left it at home, but I knew I hadn't. I had used it that morning at the grocery store to buy the ingredients for the pie. I remembered sliding it back into that zippered compartment and hearing the zip close. I excused myself from the table, saying I needed to use the restroom. Patricia's house was large, one of those modern suburban homes with an open floor plan and granite countertops. The bathroom was down the hall, decorated with tasteful gray tiles and scented candles. I locked the door and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking as I opened my banking app. It took 3 tries to enter my password correctly. When the screen finally loaded, I felt the blood drain from my face. 3 transactions, all made within the last hour. All while I sat at that dinner table, laughing and celebrating. 2 international airline tickets, $4,200. A luxury hotel booking in Bali, $2,800. A resort package with spa treatments, $1,500. $8,500 total. Charged to my card while I was 20 feet away, surrounded by my family. I sat down on the closed toilet lid, my legs suddenly unable to support me. The bathroom felt too small, the walls pressing in. I could hear laughter from the dining room, the clink of silverware on plates, someone asking for more wine. My mind raced through possibilities. Someone had taken my card, but who? When? I had been at that table the entire time, except for the few minutes I'd spent in the kitchen helping Patricia with the dishes. My purse had been hanging on my chair, visible to everyone. I looked at the transaction details again. The tickets were for 2 passengers, Bethany Caldwell and Derek Morrison. Departure date, 5 days from now. The hotel booking was under Bethany's name. The resort package was under Bethany's name. My granddaughter, my 23-year-old granddaughter, who I had babysat countless times when she was young, who I had helped put through college by giving her $500 every semester for books, who called me Gram and said I made the best chocolate chip cookies in the world. She had stolen from me. I sat in that bathroom for 10 minutes, trying to process this reality. Part of me wanted to storm back to the dining room and confront her in front of everyone. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to believe there was some explanation, some terrible misunderstanding. But there was no misunderstanding. You don't accidentally charge $8,000 to someone else's credit card for a luxury vacation to Bali. When I finally emerged from the bathroom, I had made a decision. I walked back to the dining room with a smile on my face, though it felt like my face might crack from the effort. Everyone was eating dessert now, my apple pie divided among them on Patricia's good china plates. "How's the pie, sweetheart?" I asked Bethany, my voice surprisingly steady. She looked up at me with those blue eyes she'd inherited from her father. "It's amazing. Gram. Just like always. You're the best." The words felt like knives. I nodded and took my seat, not eating any pie myself. I couldn't have swallowed a bite if I tried. I watched her for the rest of the evening. Really watched her. She was animated, excited about the wedding plans, about her future. She wore a pretty dress that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in a year. Her nails were professionally done, her hair highlighted at a salon. Derek sat beside her, his arm casually draped over the back of her chair. He was handsome in that generic way, with perfect teeth and hair that looked like it required expensive product. He worked in finance, or consulting, or something that sounded important but vague. I had never particularly liked him, though I couldn't say exactly why. He just seemed slick. Like a car salesman, all charm and no substance. When did you two decide on Bali for your honeymoon? I heard Patricia ask them. I went very still. We haven't decided anything yet, Bethany said quickly. We're looking at a few places. Bali is on the list, but it might be too expensive. She lied so easily. Her face didn't change. Her voice didn't waver. She looked right at her mother and lied without hesitation. Well, I think you should go somewhere special, Glenn said. You only get married once. Well, hopefully. He laughed at his own joke. The conversation moved on, but I couldn't focus on it anymore. All I could think about was the girl I thought I knew, the granddaughter I loved, and this stranger sitting in her place who could steal from me and lie about it without even blinking. I left before the coffee was served, claiming exhaustion. Bethany hugged me goodbye at the door. Thanks for coming. Graham, she said, squeezing me tight. And thanks for the pie. You're the sweetest. I hugged her back, but it felt like embracing a stranger. Love you, sweetheart, I managed to say. As I drove home to my small condo in Oak Park, I cried. Not dramatic sobs, just silent tears running down my face as I navigated the familiar streets. My hands gripped the steering wheel, and I focused on getting home safely. But my mind was already working, planning, because I wasn't just going to cry about this. I was going to do something about it. Corinne Westbrook hadn't survived 67 years, raised 2 children as a single mother after Warren died, and built a life on a secretary's salary by being weak. I had steel in my spine, and it was time to use it. Chapter 2. The Night of Decisions. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling of my small bedroom, listening to the sounds of Oak Park settling into darkness around me. A car passed occasionally. The heating system clicked on and off. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. But mostly, there was silence in my thoughts. I kept replaying the evening in my mind, looking for clues I might have missed. When had Bethany taken the card? It must have been when I was in the kitchen helping Patricia. Maybe she'd made an excuse to go back to the dining room, grabbed my purse, taken the card, and returned before anyone noticed. How long had she been planning this? The engagement had been announced tonight, but they must have been planning this trip for weeks, maybe longer. Had she known all along she would steal from me? Or had it been a sudden impulse, an opportunity she couldn't resist? The questions tormented me, but they didn't matter as much as the choice I now faced. What was I going to do about it? I could call the bank immediately, report the fraud, have the charges reversed. The money would be returned to my account, and Bethany would be left with canceled tickets and hotel reservations. But then what? Would I press charges? Could I send my own granddaughter to jail? The thought made me feel sick, but another part of me, the part that had been violated, betrayed, whispered that maybe she deserved it. At 23, she was old enough to understand right from wrong. This wasn't a teenage mistake. This was calculated theft. Around 3 a.m, I got out of bed and made myself a cup of chamomile tea. My kitchen was small, but tidy, everything in its place. I had learned to live simply after Warren died 15 years ago. His heart attack had been sudden, devastating. One moment we were planning our retirement, talking about finally taking that trip to see the Grand Canyon, and the next moment he was gone, leaving me with a mortgage and 2 kids still in college. I had worked 3 jobs for a while, secretary during the day, bookkeeper for a small business 2 evenings a week, and cleaning houses on weekends. I had put both kids through school, paid off the mortgage on our old house in Berwyn, eventually sold it, and moved to this smaller condo when the maintenance became too much. Every dollar I had earned through hard work and careful saving. That $8,500 represented months of my Social Security checks. It was money I had been setting aside for emergencies, for the inevitable medical expenses that come with age, and Bethany had taken it for a luxury vacation without a second thought. I opened my laptop, an old Dell that Marcus had given me when he upgraded his own, and looked at my bank account again. The charges were still there, pending. I had 24 to 48 hours before they would fully process. I could still cancel them. I had the power to stop this before it went any further. But as I sat there, sipping my tea in the quiet darkness of my kitchen, I realized something. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect, about values, about what Bethany thought she could get away with. If I simply canceled the charges and confronted her, she would probably cry, apologize, say she didn't know what came over her. Patricia would defend her daughter, maybe even suggest that I was overreacting. There would be drama, tears, promises to pay me back that would never materialize. And Bethany wouldn't really learn anything. She would learn that stealing from Grandma had consequences, but they weren't serious consequences. She would learn that family members were easy marks because they loved you too much to really punish you. No, if I was going to act, I needed to do it in a way that would leave an impression, a lesson she would never forget. I waited. I let the charges process. I watched them change from pending to completed. 2 days passed, then 3. During those days, I went about my normal routine. I had coffee with my friend Dolores Kimball at the local diner on Wednesday morning, like we did every week. I attended my book club meeting on Thursday evening. Though I couldn't focus on the discussion of the novel we were supposed to have read, Dolores noticed I was distracted. "You okay, Corinne? You seem like you're somewhere else." "Just tired," I told her. "Getting old, you know." She laughed. "Tell me about it. My knees sound like popcorn popping every time I stand up. But I wasn't okay. I was sad, angry, disappointed, and a dozen other emotions I couldn't quite name. Every time my phone rang, I thought it might be Bethany, calling to confess, to apologize. But she never called. On day 4, I received a text message from her. Graham, Derek and I are leaving for our pre-honeymoon trip tomorrow. So excited. Love you. Pre-honeymoon trip." She didn't even have the decency to call it what it was. A stolen vacation funded by her grandmother's hard-earned money. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I opened my banking app one more time. I looked at those charges, and then I called the bank's fraud department. The representative was sympathetic and efficient. "Yes, Mrs. Westbrook, I can see those charges here. They do appear to be fraudulent. I'll initiate the dispute process immediately. The funds should be returned to your account within 3 to 5 business days, and we'll issue you a new card." "Thank you," I said quietly. "I'm sorry this happened to you," she said. "Identity theft is becoming more and more common. Do you have any idea how someone might have gotten your card information?" "Yes," I said. "I know exactly how." After I hung up, I sat very still for a long moment. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I poured myself a small glass of the whiskey Warren used to keep for special occasions. It had been sitting in my cupboard since he died, the bottle dusty and 3/4 full. The whiskey burned going down, but it also warmed me. I raised the glass in a silent toast to Warren. "Wish you were here," I whispered to the empty room. "You'd know what to say right now. You always did. But Warren wasn't here. I was alone, as I had been for 15 years, and I had to handle this myself. That night, I slept better than I had in days. Not because I was happy about what I'd done, but because the decision was made. The wheels were in motion. There was no going back now." Chapter 3. The Airport. The morning of Bethany's departure, I woke up early. I made myself breakfast, oatmeal with cinnamon and a sliced banana, and ate it slowly while watching the morning news. The weatherman predicted clear skies. Perfect flying weather. I wondered if Bethany and Derek were awake yet, packing their last-minute items, double-checking their passports. I wondered if she felt any guilt at all, or if she was too excited about her stolen vacation to think about the grandmother she had robbed. My phone rang around 10. It was Patricia. "Mom, did you cancel Bethany's trip?" Her voice was sharp, accusatory. "No greeting, no how are you. I canceled the fraudulent charges made on my stolen credit card," I replied calmly. "Yes. What are you talking about? Bethany didn't steal anything. There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake, Patricia. She took my card from my purse during dinner last Tuesday and charged over $8,000 for a trip to Bali. Did she really think I wouldn't notice?" "Mom, that's ridiculous. Bethany wouldn't do that. You probably just misplaced your card and forgot you gave her permission to use it." The suggestion that I was senile, that my memory was failing, stung worse than the theft itself. "I'm 67, Patricia, not 97. My mind is perfectly clear. I watched the charges appear on my account in real time while I was sitting at your dinner table. I saw Bethany's name on the bookings. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this didn't happen. There was a pause. Then Patricia's voice changed, became pleading. Mom, even if that's true, did you have to cancel everything? They're at the airport right now. Bethany is devastated. She's crying. Derek is furious. They've been planning this trip for months. With my money she stole. But she's your granddaughter. Can't you just forgive her? Let them have this trip and we'll figure out the repayment later. And there it was. The ask I had known was coming. The expectation that I should be understanding, forgiving, accommodating. That my role as grandmother meant accepting disrespect and theft with a smile. No, I said firmly. This isn't about the money, Patricia. This is about Bethany thinking it's acceptable to steal from family. About her believing that I'm just a source of funds, not a person who deserves respect. You're being cruel, Patricia said, her voice cold now. You're punishing her over money. Do you know how that looks? I'm being cruel? I asked, my own anger rising. She stole from me. She lied to everyone about it. And I'm cruel for not rewarding that behavior. She's young. She made a mistake. She's 23 years old. That's old enough to know better. You were married and pregnant with her at 23. Was she adult enough to get engaged, but not adult enough to be held accountable for theft? Patricia was quiet for a moment. Mama, please, just call the bank back. Fix this. We'll talk about it after they get back from the trip. No. Fine, Patricia snapped. But don't expect to be invited to the wedding. If you can't support Bethany now, when she needs you, then I don't see why you should be there for her celebration. The threat hung in the air between us. It should have hurt more than it did. Maybe I was already too numb from the betrayal to feel this new wound properly. If that's your decision, I said quietly, then I'll respect it. But Patricia, think about what you're teaching your daughter. You're telling her that actions don't have consequences, that family members are there to be used and exploited. Is that really the lesson you want her to learn? I hung up before she could respond. My hand was shaking as I set the phone down on the kitchen table. For a long moment, I just sat there, breathing slowly, trying to calm the rapid beating of my heart. Then my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Bethany. I can't believe you would do this to me. Graham, I thought you loved me. I thought you wanted me to be happy. I will never forgive you for this. Never. More messages followed in rapid succession. Derek's family would have helped us. We didn't need your money anyway. You're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see anyone else happy. I hope you enjoy being alone because that's what you're going to be. I read each message, feeling them like physical blows. But underneath the pain, there was also a strange clarity. This was who my granddaughter really was. Not the sweet girl who called me Graham, but this person who could send cruel messages without remorse, who thought that stealing was justified and that calling out the theft was the real crime. I blocked her number. Then I blocked Patricia's number. I needed space, time to process what had just happened. Marcus called an hour later. Unlike Patricia, his voice was gentle. Mom, I heard what happened. Patricia called me. She's pretty upset. I'm sure she is, I said tiredly. Do you want to talk about it? Not really, I admitted. But I appreciate you calling without yelling at me first. He laughed softly. I'm not going to yell at you, Mom. I don't know all the details, but I know you. You wouldn't do something like this without a good reason. Tears pricked my eyes at his words. Thank you for that. For what it's worth, he continued. I think Bethany has been spoiled for too long. Patricia and Glenn give her everything she wants. They paid for her apartment, her car, her entire lifestyle. She's never had to work for anything. This might be good for her in the long run, even if it doesn't feel that way now. I hope so, I said. But right now, I just feel like I've lost my family. You haven't lost me, Marcus said firmly. Or Yolanda, or the kids. We still love you. We'll always love you. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet condo and cried. Not the silent tears from before, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere profound in my chest. I cried for the relationship with my granddaughter that I had thought was real, but apparently wasn't. I cried for Patricia, who chose her daughter's feelings over basic principles of right and wrong. I cried for myself, for having to make such a hard choice. But when the tears finally stopped, I felt something else too. A strange sense of relief. Of freedom. Almost. I had drawn a line. I had said no. I had refused to be victimized, even when the victimizer was someone I loved. It had cost me dearly, but I had kept my dignity, and in the end, maybe that was all any of us really had. Chapter 4. The Silence. The days after the airport incident crawled by in a strange, muted way. I kept expecting my phone to ring, for Bethany or Patricia to call with apologies. But the silence stretched on. I tried to keep myself busy. I reorganized my closets, something I'd been meaning to do for months. I deep cleaned my kitchen, scrubbing the grout between the tiles with an old toothbrush. I baked bread just to have something to do with my hands, and ended up with more loaves than one person could eat. Dolores came by on the third day with a casserole and genuine concern. "Marcus called me," she said, as I led her into my small living room. "Told me what happened. I wanted to make sure you were eating." "I'm eating," I assured her, though in truth I'd had little appetite. "Thank you for the casserole." We sat together in my living room, drinking tea while I told her the whole story. Dolores listened without interrupting, her weathered face showing empathy and understanding. She was 72, a widow like me, and we'd been friends for over a decade. When I finished, she shook her head slowly. "That girl has some nerve, and your daughter defending her, that's just enabling bad behavior." "I know," I said quietly, "but she's my daughter. I love her. I hate that we're not speaking. You did the right thing, Corinne. Sometimes love means setting boundaries, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Her words comforted me, but they didn't erase the loneliness that had settled over my condo like a heavy blanket. Marcus called every few days to check on me. His kids, my grandchildren, Devin and Michaela, sent me sweet text messages with heart emojis and photos of their daily lives. Devin was 19 and in his second year at community college. Michaela was 16 and obsessed with volleyball. They were good kids, raised with values that seemed so different from how Bethany had turned out. But there was no word from Patricia or Bethany. The silence from them was absolute, pointed. 2 weeks after the incident, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email or text, but an actual physical letter, hand-addressed in Patricia's neat handwriting. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. "Mom," it began, "I've had time to think about everything that happened. I've talked to Glenn, to our pastor, to my therapist. I need you to understand my perspective. Bethany made a mistake, yes, but your response was disproportionate and cruel. You embarrassed her publicly, ruined a trip she'd been excited about, and damaged her relationship with Derek. He's questioning whether he wants to be part of a family where this kind of vindictiveness is normal. I want to repair our relationship, but I need you to understand that forgiveness goes both ways. You need to apologize to Bethany for overreacting. You need to show her that you love her more than you love being right. If you can do that, we can move forward. If not, I think we need some distance while you work through whatever bitterness you're feeling toward your own family." The letter went on, but I couldn't read anymore. My vision blurred with tears. I folded the letter carefully and set it aside. Patricia wanted me to apologize, not for being stolen from, but for the audacity of defending myself, for refusing to be a victim. The request was so absurd it would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. I didn't respond to the letter. What could I say that wouldn't make things worse? Patricia had chosen her position, and I had chosen mine. We were at an impasse. Instead, I focused on the relationships I still had. Marcus and his family came over for dinner one Sunday. We made spaghetti together, Michaela showing me videos on her phone of her volleyball games while Devin helped me mix the salad. Yolanda, Marcus's wife, pulled me aside while we were doing dishes. "I'm sorry this happened. Corinne, you didn't deserve any of it. Thank you," I said, grateful for her support. "How's Marcus handling it?" "I know Patricia is his sister." "He's struggling," Yolanda admitted. "He loves you both, but he knows you were right. He told Patricia as much, which is why she's barely speaking to him either now." I felt a stab of guilt. I'm causing problems for everyone. "No," Yolanda said firmly, gripping my arm gently. "Bethany caused this problem. You just refused to pretend it didn't happen. There's a difference." After they left, my condo felt emptier than before. I sat on my small couch, looking at the family photos on my wall. There was one of all of us from 5 years ago at Devin's middle school graduation. Everyone was smiling, arms around each other. We looked like the perfect family. Had we been perfect then? Or had I just been blind to the cracks that were already forming? I thought about Warren, about what he would say if he were here. He'd always been more easygoing than me, quicker to forgive and forget. But he'd also had a strong sense of justice. I think he would have understood why I couldn't just let this go. A month passed. Then, too, the holidays approached, and with them, new complications. Marcus invited me to Thanksgiving at his house. "Your sister will be at her in-laws," he said carefully, "so there won't be any awkwardness." The fact that we had to coordinate holidays to avoid each other felt surreal. When had my family become so fractured? Thanksgiving at Marcus's house was nice but subdued. We all felt Patricia's absence, even though no one mentioned her. Michaela asked me about my apple pie recipe. She wanted to learn to make it herself. Devin told me about his classes, about his dreams of becoming a physical therapist. I was grateful for them, for their continued presence in my life. But part of me ached for the family members who weren't there. After dinner, while we were watching football, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My new credit card had arrived weeks ago, but I'd kept my same phone number. The text was from Bethany, using a friend's phone since I'd blocked her. "Happy Thanksgiving, Gram. I hope you're enjoying your lonely holiday. Derek and I are having dinner with his family. They actually know how to forgive and move on, unlike some people." I deleted the message without responding, but it stung. Not because of what it said, but because of the pettiness it revealed. Bethany wasn't sorry. She was vindictive. That night, lying in bed in my dark room, I wondered if I'd made the wrong choice. Maybe I should have just let it go, kept the peace, maintained the relationship even if it meant swallowing my pride and accepting disrespect. But then I thought about the message Bethany had sent, the cruelty in it, the complete lack of remorse or self-reflection. And I knew that if I had simply forgiven her without consequences, she would have done it again, to me or to someone else. I would have been enabling her to become someone even worse. I had taught her a lesson. Whether she chose to learn from it was up to her. Chapter 5. Christmas Revelations December arrived with early snow and the relentless cheer of the holiday season. Every store window was decorated with lights and garland. Every radio station played carols. Every commercial reminded me that this was supposed to be a time for family. I threw myself into volunteering at the local food bank, something I did every year but with more intensity this time. Sorting cans, packing boxes, helping distribute meals to families who needed them. It felt good to be useful, to focus on helping others instead of dwelling on my own problems. One afternoon at the food bank, I worked alongside a younger woman named Chloe Brennan. She was maybe in her 30s, with tired eyes and a toddler she kept entertained with Cheerios while she worked. We got talking during a break. She told me about her situation, divorced, working 2 jobs, barely making rent. Her ex-husband had cleaned out their joint account before leaving her with nothing. "Did you press charges?" I asked. She shook her head. "He's my daughter's father. How could I send her dad to jail? But sometimes I wonder if I should have. He never paid child support, just disappeared. Last I heard, he's in Florida with his new girlfriend, posting pictures of their vacations on social media." "I'm sorry," I said. "That's terrible." She shrugged. "It is what it is. You learn who people really are when things get hard. The important thing is, my daughter and I are okay. We have each other." Her words stayed with me. She had been betrayed by someone who vowed to love her, had lost financial security, had every right to be bitter. But she was here, volunteering her time to help others, finding meaning and purpose beyond her pain. If she could do that, so could I. Christmas week arrived. Marcus invited me to spend Christmas Eve with his family, and I accepted gratefully. But as the day approached, I found myself thinking more and more about Patricia and Bethany. Did they miss me at all? Or were they perfectly content without me in their lives? On December 23rd, I received an unexpected visitor. Glenn, Patricia's husband, showed up at my door in the early evening. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot on my doorstep. "Corinne, can I come in? We need to talk." I let him in, offering him coffee that he declined. We sat in my living room, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he sighed. "Patricia doesn't know I'm here. She'd be angry if she found out." "Then why did you come?" "Because this has gone on long enough. Because Christmas is in 2 days and my family is fractured and miserable. Because I've been watching Patricia defend Bethany's behavior for months now, and I can't do it anymore. I looked at him carefully. Glenn was a good man, I'd always thought. A dentist with a calm demeanor and a dry sense of humor. He loved Patricia, that was clear. But he'd always been somewhat passive, letting her make most of the decisions about the family. What Bethany did was wrong, he continued. I knew it at the time, but Patricia was so upset that I didn't want to add to it by taking your side. But Corinne, she stole from you. $8,000. That's not a small mistake or a youthful indiscretion. That's a crime. I know. And the way they've both treated you since. He shook his head. Patricia has convinced herself that you're the villain in this story, that you humiliated Bethany out of spite. She can't see that you were just standing up for yourself. Can I ask you something? I said quietly. Of course. Did you know Bethany was planning to steal from me? He looked genuinely shocked. No, absolutely not. If I had known, I would have stopped it. But looking back now, I think Derek put her up to it. He's not a good influence on her, Corinne. He's arrogant, entitled, obsessed with keeping up appearances. I don't think Bethany would have done this on her own. That's not an excuse, I said firmly. I know it's not. I'm just trying to help you understand. He paused, then added, They broke up, by the way, last week. I felt a jolt of surprise. They did? Derek's family found out about the theft. Someone, I don't know who, told them the real reason the trip got canceled. They were horrified. His mother called off the engagement, said they couldn't have a daughter-in-law who was a thief. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy for Bethany. How is she handling it? Not well. She's been in her old room at our house for the past week, barely coming out. Patricia is furious at Derek's family, defending Bethany to anyone who will listen. But between you and me, I think this might be the wake-up call Bethany needs. We sat in silence for a moment. The Christmas lights from my neighbor's house blinked through my window, red and green dancing on the wall. I don't expect you to forgive her right away, Glenn said. And I'm not asking you to pretend this didn't happen. But maybe, when you're ready, you could consider meeting with her, hearing her out. Patricia won't admit it, but she misses you. And despite everything, I think Bethany does too. I'll think about it, I said honestly. After Glenn left, I sat for a long time thinking. Part of me was glad Derek was out of the picture. Glenn was right. He had been a bad influence. But another part of me knew that Bethany had made her own choices. Derek might have encouraged her, but she was the one who had taken my card, made the purchases, lied about it. Still, the news unsettled me. My granddaughter was hurting. No matter how angry I was at her, I didn't take pleasure in her pain. Christmas Eve at Marcus's house was bittersweet. We exchanged gifts, ate too much food, watched Michaela excitedly show off the new volleyball shoes she'd received. But Patricia's absence hung over everything like a ghost. As I was leaving, Marcus walked me to my car. It was snowing lightly, the flakes catching in the streetlights. Glenn came to see me. I told him. Marcus nodded. He called me first, asked if he thought it was a good idea. I told him to follow his conscience. Do you think I should reach out to them? Marcus was quiet for a moment, his breath visible in the cold air. I think you should do whatever feels right for you, Mom. Not what makes others comfortable or what's expected. What feels right to your own heart. I don't know what that is anymore. Then maybe give it more time. There's no rush. The ball is in their court. They owe you an apology, not the other way around. I drove home through the snowy streets, Marcus's words echoing in my mind. When I got to my condo, I found something unexpected on my doorstep. A small wrapped package. There was no card, but I recognized Patricia's wrapping paper, the same pattern she'd used for years. My hands shook as I brought it inside and unwrapped it. Inside was a photo frame with a picture I'd never seen before. It was from when Bethany was about 5 years old, sitting on my lap at some long-ago Christmas. We were both laughing, her small arms around my neck, my arms wrapped protectively around her. On the back, in Patricia's handwriting, "We miss you. Mom. Merry Christmas." I set the frame on my mantle and cried. Chapter 6. The Letter. After Christmas, the winter stretched out gray and cold. January was always the hardest month in Chicago. The holiday cheer was gone, but spring was still months away. The days were short, the nights long, and the cold seemed to seep into my bones no matter how high I turned up the heat. I settled into a routine: coffee with Dolores twice a week, volunteering at the food bank every Thursday, Sunday dinners with Marcus and his family, book club meetings that I actually paid attention to now. But I thought about Patricia and Bethany constantly. Every time my phone buzzed, part of me hoped it would be them. It never was. In mid-January, I decided to write a letter, not to send necessarily, but just to organize my thoughts, to try to make sense of everything that had happened. I sat at my small kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a pen, and I wrote for hours. "Dear Bethany," I began, "there are things I need to say, even if you never read them." I wrote about how it felt to discover the theft, the shock, the betrayal, the way my hands had trembled in that bathroom as I looked at my banking app. I wrote about the years I had spent building a relationship with her, the sacrifices I had made, not just for her, but for my whole family. I wrote about losing Warren, about the loneliness that followed, about how my grandchildren had become one of my greatest sources of joy, and about how that joy had been tainted by the realization that I wasn't valued as a person, only as a resource. But I also wrote about my own regrets. Maybe I had been too generous over the years, too willing to help financially without teaching the value of money. Maybe I had made it too easy for my family to take advantage of my kindness. I wrote about the choice I'd made at the airport, about knowing that I could have let it go but deciding to stand my ground instead, about how that choice had cost me dearly but had also given me back my self-respect. And I wrote about forgiveness, how I wanted to forgive her, wanted to rebuild our relationship, but how I couldn't do that without acknowledgement of what she'd done, without a real apology, not just words meant to make me give in, but genuine remorse. By the time I finished, I had written 8 pages. My hand cramped from holding the pen, and tears had spotted the paper in several places. I read it over once, then folded it and put it in an envelope. I addressed it to Bethany in care of Patricia's house, but I didn't mail it. Not yet. I set it on my kitchen counter where I'd see it every day, a reminder of words I might someday have the courage to send. 3 days later, I received a letter myself. It arrived in a pale blue envelope, addressed in handwriting I didn't recognize. When I opened it, I found pages written in Bethany's looping script. "Dear Gram," it began. "I don't know if you'll even read this. I wouldn't blame you if you threw it away, but I need to try." My hands trembled as I sat down at my kitchen table to read. I've been going to therapy since Derek and I broke up. My therapist asked me to write down everything that happened from my perspective, to really examine my actions and motivations. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done. I stole from you. I can't even write that without feeling sick to my stomach. I took your credit card from your purse while you were helping Mom in the kitchen. I'd been planning it for days. Derek and I couldn't afford the trip we wanted, and we were both so stressed about money. And then I saw your purse sitting there and I took the opportunity. I told myself it wasn't really stealing because you were family, because you'd probably give me the money anyway if I asked. I convinced myself that you wouldn't mind, that you'd want me to be happy, that I'd pay you back eventually, even though I had no real plan to do that. But even as I was typing in your card number, even as I was booking the tickets and the hotel, I knew it was wrong. I felt sick the whole time. And then when you came back from the bathroom and sat down at dinner, I kept waiting for you to say something. When you didn't, I thought maybe I'd gotten away with it. I was relieved. That's the worst part. Gram. I was relieved that I'd stolen from you successfully. What kind of person does that make me? When everything got canceled at the airport, I was so angry. But I wasn't angry at myself. I was angry at you for catching me, for not just letting it go. Derek kept saying you were being vindictive, that you should have just talked to us instead of humiliating us publicly. And I believed him because it was easier than admitting I was wrong. But then Derek's family found out the truth, and they were horrified. His mom told him she didn't raise him to associate with thieves. They gave him an ultimatum. Me or them. He chose them, and I was devastated. But also, I was relieved again, because deep down, I knew I didn't really want to marry someone who thought stealing from my grandmother was acceptable. The letter went on for several more pages. Bethany detailed the therapy sessions where she'd confronted her own entitlement, her habit of taking shortcuts, her inability to accept responsibility for her actions. She talked about how Patricia had always shielded her from consequences, how that had stunted her growth as a person. She ended with, I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not even sure I deserve your forgiveness. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Not sorry I got caught, but sorry I did it in the first place. Sorry I hurt you. Sorry I took your love and generosity for granted. I'm trying to be better. I got a job, a real one, not something my parents arranged. I'm working as a hostess at a restaurant downtown. It doesn't pay much, but I'm earning my own money for the first time in my life, and I'm saving every penny I can to pay you back. It's going to take me a long time, maybe years, but I'm going to do it. I miss you, Gram. I miss your apple pie and your stories, and the way you always made me feel special. I ruined that, and I have to live with it. But if there's ever a chance for us to talk, to try to rebuild even a small part of what we had, I would be grateful for it. I love you. I'm so sorry. Bethany? I read the letter 3 times, crying through each reading. It was the apology I'd been waiting for, but it was more than that. It was evidence of real growth, real understanding. But could I trust it? Or was this just another manipulation, another way to get back into my good graces? I called Marcus that evening. He listened as I read him the letter over the phone. "What do you think?" I asked when I finished. "I think it sounds genuine," he said carefully. "But Mom, only you can decide if you're ready to engage with her again. There's no wrong answer here. I'm scared," I admitted. Scared of being hurt again. Scared of letting her back in and discovering it was all just words. That's understandable. But let me ask you something. Which will you regret more? Taking a chance and potentially being hurt again, or never taking the chance and losing her forever? The question haunted me for days. I carried both letters with me, the one I'd written to Bethany and the one she'd written to me. They sat on my kitchen counter, 2 sides of the same painful story. Finally, on a cold Saturday morning in late January, I made a decision. I picked up my phone and sent a text to Patricia. "Is Bethany available to meet me for coffee next week?" The response came within minutes. "Yes. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for giving her a chance." I set up the meeting for Tuesday afternoon at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between my condo and Patricia's house in Naperville. Then I sat down and finished the letter I'd started weeks ago, adding a final paragraph. "Bethany," I wrote, "I received your letter. I want you to know that I appreciate your honesty and the work you're doing to better yourself. I'm willing to meet with you, to talk, to see if we can rebuild what was broken, but this isn't a reset button. We can't go back to how things were. We can only move forward, and that will take time, honesty, and sustained effort from both of us. I hope you're ready for that. I'm willing to try if you are." I sealed both letters, mine to her and a copy of hers that I wanted to give back to her, in an envelope. On Tuesday, I would bring them with me. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. Chapter 7. The Coffee Shop. Tuesday arrived cold and bright, one of those winter days where the sun shines but offers no warmth. I dressed carefully, wanting to look put together but not overly formal. I chose a burgundy sweater Warren had always liked, dark slacks, and the pearl earrings my mother had given me decades ago. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, needing time to settle my nerves. It was a small place called the Daily Grind, with worn wooden tables and local art on the walls. The smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls filled the air. I ordered a decaf latte and found a table in the corner. My hands wrapped around the warm cup as I watched the door, my stomach churning with anxiety. What if Bethany didn't show up? What if she did show up but we just fought? What if this was a mistake? At exactly 2 o'clock, the door opened and Bethany walked in. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She looked different, thinner, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of the styled waves she usually wore. She had on jeans and a plain coat, no makeup that I could see. She looked young and vulnerable. Our eyes met across the coffee shop. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she walked toward me slowly, as if approaching a wild animal that might bolt. "Hi, Gram," she said softly. "Hello, Bethany. Sit down. Can I get you something?" She shook her head. "I'm okay. Thank you." We sat in awkward silence for a moment. I studied her face, looking for signs of the girl I'd known, trying to reconcile her with the person who had stolen from me. "Thank you for meeting me," she finally said. "I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either," I admitted. "But I got your letter. It meant a lot to me. Did you believe it?" Her eyes were direct, searching mine, Or do you think I was just saying what you wanted to hear? I don't know yet. I said honestly. That's why I wanted to meet in person. Words on paper are easier than words face to face. She nodded, looking down at her hands clasped on the table. I understand. I wouldn't trust me either. Tell me about the therapy, I said. What have you been learning? Bethany took a deep breath. Mostly that I'm really messed up. That's hard to admit, but it's true. My therapist says I have issues with entitlement, with taking shortcuts, with not understanding how my actions affect other people. She paused, then continued. She asked me to think about why I felt okay stealing from you specifically, and I realized it's because I'd always seen you as someone who existed to take care of me, not as a real person with your own needs and struggles, just as grandma, someone whose job it was to love me and support me no matter what. That hurt to hear, but I appreciated the honesty. Go on. When you canceled the trip, I was so angry because I felt like you broke the rules. Grandmas aren't supposed to punish their grandchildren. They're supposed to be soft and forgiving and let us get away with things. You were supposed to just talk to me privately, maybe make me promise to pay you back, but ultimately let me have what I wanted because you loved me. And now I see how insane that is, how selfish and childish. You're a person who worked hard for every dollar you have. You're a person who deserves respect, not just from strangers, but especially from family. You're a person who has needs and feelings and boundaries, and I violated all of those. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't wipe them away. I'm so ashamed. Gram. Every time I think about what I did, I want to disappear. I can't believe I did that to you. I can't believe I'm that person. I reached across the table and took her hand. You're not that person anymore. Or at least, you're trying not to be. That counts for something. She looked up at me, hope flickering in her eyes. Does that mean you forgive me? I withdrew my hand gently. It means I'm willing to work toward forgiveness. But Bethany, you have to understand. What you did broke something between us. It's going to take time to rebuild that trust. Maybe we never will fully, but I'm willing to try if you are. I am, she said quickly. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm already paying you back. I've saved $400 so far from my job. I know it's just a tiny fraction of what I owe you, but I'm going to keep saving until every penny is repaid. I don't care about the money, I said. I mean, I do care, but that's not what this is really about. It's about respect. It's about you understanding that I'm not just a resource for you to exploit. I know. I get that now. Or at least, I'm starting to. We talked for another hour. She told me about her job at the restaurant, how humbling it was to work for tips, to be yelled at by customers, to come home exhausted and smelling like fried food. She told me about living with her parents again at 23 and how Patricia still tried to baby her, but she was resisting it now. And she told me about Derek, about how she'd realized he'd been using her just like she'd been using me, how he'd valued her only for what she could provide, social status, someone pretty on his arm, access to her parents, money. When those things disappeared, so did he. I dodged a bullet there, she said with a sad smile. If you hadn't canceled that trip, I probably would have married him and wasted years before figuring out he was wrong for me. Sometimes blessings come in painful disguises, I said. Before we parted, I gave her the envelope with my letter and a copy of hers. I want you to keep these, I said, on days when you're tempted to fall back into old patterns. Read them. Remember what it felt like to hit rock bottom. Remember what it cost both of us. She clutched the envelope to her chest. Thank you, Gram, for not giving up on me completely, for giving me this chance. I'm not promising everything will go back to normal, I warned her. I need time, and I need to see sustained change, not just good intentions. I understand. As I drove home, I felt lighter than I had in months. The conversation hadn't magically fixed everything, but it was a start, a real start, based on honesty instead of pretense. When I got home, I found a message from Patricia on my phone. Bethany just called me crying. She said you were kind to her. Thank you, Mom. I know she hurt you. I know I hurt you too by not supporting you. I'd like to talk sometime if you're willing. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I'd like that too, but let's take it slow. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Chapter 8. Slow Healing. The weeks that followed were tentative, careful. Bethany and I met for coffee twice more, each conversation a little easier than the last. She was true to her word about paying me back. Every 2 weeks, she deposited money into my account, usually between $200 and $300. At that rate, it would take her years to repay the full amount, but the gesture mattered more than the speed. I also started meeting with Patricia once a week for lunch. These meetings were harder than the ones with Bethany. Patricia struggled to admit she'd been wrong, that she'd enabled her daughter's behavior, that she'd chosen defending Bethany over supporting me. Our first lunch was at a quiet Italian restaurant near her house. We ordered salads neither of us ate much of and talked around the real issues for the first 20 minutes. Finally, Patricia set down her fork. "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have said that immediately, but it's hard to admit I failed you." "You didn't fail me," I said. "You failed to see the situation clearly because you were too close to it. I should have believed you. When you said Bethany stole from you, I should have trusted your word over hers. You're my mother. You've never lied to me, but I couldn't accept that my daughter could do something like that. She's still your daughter, and you're still her mother. Your instinct to protect her is natural. But there's a difference between protecting her and enabling her," Patricia said, her voice breaking. "I've been thinking about that a lot, about all the times I bailed her out of consequences, made excuses for her behavior, blamed everyone else for her problems. I didn't do her any favors. I created someone who thought she could do whatever she wanted without repercussions. She's learning now," I said. "This experience, as painful as it was, might be the best thing that ever happened to her. I hope so. But Mom, I'm not just apologizing for Bethany. I'm apologizing for me, for the things I said, for threatening to uninvite you to the wedding, for making you feel like you were the problem. You weren't. You were the only one willing to stand up and say that what happened was wrong. We both cried then, there in that restaurant with other diners pretending not to notice. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. There was still hurt that needed healing, trust that needed rebuilding. But it was real." March arrived with the promise of spring. The snow began to melt, revealing grass that had been buried for months. The days grew longer, brighter. I found myself feeling more hopeful than I had in a long time. Marcus and his family invited Patricia and Bethany to a Sunday dinner, the first time we'd all be together since the November dinner that started everything. I was nervous, but I agreed to go. The dinner was at Marcus's house, a modest but comfortable home in a suburb west of Chicago. When I arrived, Patricia and Bethany were already there, helping Yolanda set the table. Bethany looked up when I walked in. "Hi, Graham." She didn't rush over to hug me like she would have before. She understood that we weren't there yet, but her smile was genuine, if tentative. "Hello, sweetheart. How was your week?" "Good. Busy. I'm working doubles on weekends now, trying to build up my savings." Patricia came over and hugged me carefully. "Thanks for coming, Mom." The evening was careful, conscious. Everyone was aware of the fragility of our rebuilt relationships, but there was also warmth there, tentative affection beginning to bloom again. Over dinner, Devin and Michaela carried much of the conversation, telling stories from school and sports. Their easy chatter helped fill the awkward silences that occasionally fell. After dinner, while we were having coffee, Glenn cleared his throat. "I have something to say." We all looked at him. "Corinne, I want to apologize to you as well. I should have spoken up that night at dinner when Bethany made that comment about your gift. Even before all this other stuff came out, that was disrespectful, and I should have said something. Thank you, Glenn. That means a lot." "And Bethany," he continued, turning to his daughter, "I want to apologize to you too. Your mother and I gave you everything you asked for, but we didn't teach you the value of earning things for yourself. We did you a disservice, and I'm sorry for that." Bethany nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thanks, Dad." The apologies seemed to open a floodgate. One by one, family members shared their feelings about what had happened. Marcus talked about how hard it had been to be caught in the middle. Yolanda shared how the experience had made her think about how they were raising their own kids. Michaela, my 16-year-old granddaughter, spoke up unexpectedly. "I was really angry at Bethany when I found out what she did. Graham is the best, and she didn't deserve that. But I'm glad we're all here now, trying to fix things. I think that's what families do. They mess up, but then they try to make it right. Out of the mouths of teenagers," I thought with a small smile. Before the evening ended, Bethany asked if she could speak to me privately. We went out onto Marcus's back porch, where the night air was cool but not uncomfortable. Graham, I wanted to tell you something. I've been accepted to a community college program for accounting. I'm going to start in the fall. I want to build a real career, something I'm proud of. That's wonderful. Bethany, I'm proud of you. I never would have done this before. Before everything happened, I was just coasting through life, expecting things to work out because they always had. But now I know I have to work for what I want, and I want to be someone you can be proud of again. I am proud of you, I said honestly. Not for who you were, but for who you're becoming. That takes courage. She hugged me then, and this time I hugged her back fully. It still wasn't the same as before. Some innocence had been lost. Some trust still needed rebuilding. But it was real, and it was progress. Driving home that night, I thought about how far we'd all come in just 4 months. From the worst betrayal to tentative healing. It wasn't a happy ending because the story wasn't over. We were all still works in progress. Still learning, still trying. But maybe that was okay. Maybe that was real life. Messy, imperfect, but ultimately moving toward something better. Chapter 9. The Wedding That Never Was. April brought cherry blossoms and rain, the world turning green again after the long winter. I was planting flowers in the small patio space outside my condo when Bethany called me one afternoon. Graham, can we talk? Of course. What's on your mind? There was a pause. Then she said, Derek's getting married. To someone new. The wedding is next month, and it's supposed to be this huge fancy thing at some resort. His new fiancé's family has money. How do you feel about that? Honestly, relieved. Not even a little bit sad or jealous. Just grateful that's not me anymore. But Mom is making this into a whole thing, saying I should be upset, saying Derek moved on too fast. And I'm sitting here thinking, no, this is great. He found someone from his own world. I hope they're happy. I smiled. That shows real growth, sweetheart. The thing is, I keep thinking about what our wedding would have been like. I had this whole vision, the perfect dress, the perfect venue, the perfect everything. And none of it was about actually being married to Derek. It was all about the show, about the Instagram photos, about making people jealous. And now I think if I ever get married, I want it to be small, real, just people who actually care about us, not people we're trying to impress. Does that make sense? Complete sense. We talked for another hour, and I was struck by how different these conversations were now. Before, Bethany had talked at me, sharing surface-level details about her life. Now she talked with me, sharing deeper thoughts and asking for my perspective, genuinely wanting to hear it. After we hung up, Patricia called. Did Bethany tell you about Derek? She did. She seems to be handling it well. Better than I am, Patricia admitted. I keep wanting to be angry on her behalf, but she won't let me. She says she's happy for him, and I think she means it. When did my daughter become more mature than me? Probably when she had to face real consequences for the first time, I said gently. That tends to accelerate growth. Patricia laughed ruefully. You're right, of course. I'm trying to learn too, Mom, to let her face her own battles instead of fighting them for her. It's harder than I thought it would be. Over the next few weeks, I watched Bethany continue to transform. She got promoted at the restaurant to server, which meant better tips and more money to save. She enrolled in 2 classes at the community college for the summer semester, getting a head start on her degree. She started volunteering at a women's shelter on her days off, something she'd never shown interest in before. One Saturday, she asked if I wanted to come to the shelter with her. It's hard sometimes, she explained as we drove to the south side. Hearing these women's stories, what they've been through, but it helps me keep perspective. Whatever problems I have, they're nothing compared to what some of these women are dealing with. The shelter was a converted apartment building, clean but worn. The women there ranged in age from late teens to elderly, all of them refugees from domestic violence or homelessness or addiction. Bethany introduced me to the director, a formidable black woman in her 50s named Regina Montgomery. Corinne, this is my Graham, the one I told you about. Regina shook my hand firmly. So you're the grandmother. Bethany talks about you all the time. About how you taught her the hardest but most important lesson of her life. I hope I did it with love, I said. The best lessons usually hurt, Regina said. but they stick. That girl has grown more in the past few months than most people do in years. Watching Bethany interact with the women at the shelter, I saw someone I barely recognized. She was patient, compassionate, genuinely interested in their stories. She helped serve lunch, played with the children, sat with an elderly woman who was having a bad day, and just listened. This was not the self-centered girl who had stolen from me. This was someone new, someone better. On the drive home, I told her how impressed I was. "You've really found your purpose here." "I don't know about purpose," she said, "but it makes me feel useful, like I'm contributing something good to the world instead of just taking up space." That evening, I wrote in the journal I'd started keeping after the theft. Today, I saw who Bethany is becoming, and I'm filled with hope. The girl who stole from me is gone. In her place is a young woman who is learning empathy, responsibility, and grace. I don't know if we'll ever fully repair what was broken, but I see now that something new is being built, something that might actually be stronger than what we had before. Chapter 10. The Payment. By June, Bethany had saved and paid back $3,000, still less than half of what she owed, but significant progress. Each payment notification I received from my bank felt like a small victory, not because of the money itself, but because of what it represented, her commitment to making things right. One warm Sunday afternoon, she asked me to meet her at a park near Lake Michigan. She said she had something important to give me. I found her sitting on a bench overlooking the water, holding a manila envelope. She looked nervous. "What's this?" I asked as I sat down beside her. "Open it." Inside the envelope were several documents. The first was a payment plan she'd drawn up, showing how she intended to pay me back the remaining $5,500 over the next 18 months. It was detailed, realistic, accounting for her income and expenses. "I wanted to show you that I'm serious about this," she said. "That this isn't just something I'm doing until you're not mad anymore. I'm going to pay you back every penny, and I'm putting it in writing." The second document was even more surprising. It was a letter she'd written to herself, to be opened in 5 years. She'd had it notarized. "What's this?" "It's a reminder," she explained. 5 years from now, I want to read about this time in my life and remember what I learned. I want to remember the person I was and the person I became. I want to make sure I never forget. The third document made me cry. It was a donation receipt in my name. She had donated $500 to the food bank where I volunteered. "I can't pay you back all at once," she said, her own eyes wet. "But I wanted to honor you in another way. You've spent your whole life giving to others. I wanted to make a gift in your name to something you care about. Bethany." I couldn't finish the sentence. I just pulled her into a hug and let us both cry. We sat on that bench for a long time, watching the sailboats on the lake, not talking much. Sometimes silence can say more than words. Finally, she spoke. Graham, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think you'll ever completely trust me again?" I considered the question carefully. "I don't know." I said honestly, trust is built over years and can be destroyed in moments. But rebuilt trust, if it happens, is different from original trust. It's stronger in some ways because it's been tested. I think we're building a new kind of relationship. And I don't know exactly what it will look like, but I'm willing to see where it goes. "That's fair," she said. "I just want you to know that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your trust. Even if I never fully get there, I'll keep trying." That night, I had dinner with Marcus and his family. I told them about my afternoon with Bethany, about the payment plan and the donation. "She's really changed," Yolanda observed. "I saw her last week at the grocery store, and she was different, more grounded, somehow." "Hardship does that," Marcus said. "It either breaks you or rebuilds you stronger." Bethany chose to be rebuilt. Michaela, now finishing her sophomore year of high school, added her perspective. "I think what Bethany did was really wrong, but I also think what you did, Graham, was really brave. You showed all of us that it's okay to stand up for yourself, even when it's family, especially when it's family." Her words touched me deeply. I hadn't thought about how this situation might affect my younger grandchildren, what lessons they might take from it. Later that week, I received an unexpected letter from Derek's mother. I didn't know how she'd gotten my address until I read the letter. "Dear Mrs. Westbrook," it began. "I hope you don't mind that I obtained your address from Patricia Caldwell. I wanted to reach out to thank you." The letter went on to explain that after the engagement ended, Derek's mother had learned the full story of what happened. She was mortified that her son had been involved, even peripherally, in the theft. She had sat Derek down and had some very hard conversations with him about entitlement and character. Your willingness to stand up for yourself, even at great personal cost, showed my son that actions have consequences, she wrote. He's engaged now to a lovely young woman from a good family, but more importantly, he's become a better person. He's volunteering at a youth center, working with at-risk teens, teaching them about financial responsibility. He says he never wants to be the kind of person who thinks rules don't apply to him. I never expected my decision to have ripples that extended beyond my own family. But here was evidence that standing up for myself had taught lessons to people I barely knew. I wrote back to Derek's mother, thanking her for her letter. I also said that I hoped Derek and his fiancée would be very happy, and I meant it. Anger and bitterness served no purpose. Life was too short. July arrived with hot, humid weather typical of Midwest summers. The city opened the fire hydrants for kids to play in, and Lake Michigan beaches filled with people seeking relief from the heat. Bethany called me one evening, excited. Graham, I got my first paycheck from my internship. She had secured a part-time internship at an accounting firm for the summer, in addition to her restaurant job. It meant long days and little free time, but she was thriving. That's wonderful, sweetheart. How do you like it? I love it. It's challenging, and I have so much to learn, but I actually care about doing well, not just for the grade or to impress anyone, but because I genuinely want to be good at this. We talked about her work, about the classes she was taking, and then she said something that surprised me. Derek got married last weekend. I saw the photos on social media. They looked happy. How do you feel? Grateful, she said simply. Grateful that's not my life. Grateful I learned the lessons I needed to learn before I made an even bigger mistake. That's wisdom, Bethany. Hard-earned wisdom. Yeah, she agreed. The hardest lessons always are. Chapter 11. Autumn Changes. September brought cooler weather and the start of Bethany's full-time enrollment at community college. She had quit the restaurant job to focus on school, though she still did weekend shifts to supplement her income and continue paying me back. Patricia called me one afternoon, her voice troubled. Mom, can I talk to you about something? Of course. It's about Bethany. She's been accepted to a transfer program at DePaul University for next fall. It's a great opportunity, and she'd get in-state tuition, but she'd have to move closer to the city. Glenn and I offered to pay for her housing and tuition, like we did before, but she turned us down. She wants to do it herself. She says she has to. That accepting money from us would undermine everything she's learned. But Mom, she can't work full-time, go to school full-time, and pay her own way. It's too much. Did you tell her that? Of course. And she said she'd find a way. She's looking into scholarships, financial aid, maybe taking out student loans. She's determined to do this without our money. I could hear the frustration in Patricia's voice, but also something else. Pride, maybe, mixed with fear. Patricia, I said gently, you have to let her do this. If she needs help, she'll ask. But she needs to know she can succeed on her own merit, not because Mommy and Daddy are bankrolling her life. But what if she fails? What if it's too hard and she gives up? Then she'll learn from that too. But my guess is she won't fail. She's tougher than you think, than any of us thought. There was a long pause. When did you get so wise, Mom? I laughed. About 6 months ago, sitting in a bathroom at your house, looking at fraudulent charges on my banking app. Patricia laughed too, though it was tinged with sadness. I'm sorry it took that for me to really see you, to appreciate your strength. Better late than never. That weekend, Bethany came over to my condo to help me with some cleaning. My arthritis had been acting up, making it hard to move furniture or reach high shelves. She arrived early Saturday morning with coffee and donuts. We worked companionably for a few hours, chatting about school, her classes, her dreams for the future. It felt almost normal, though there was still an awareness between us of the journey we'd been on. During lunch, she brought up the DePaul transfer. Mom told you, didn't she? She's worried about you. I know, but Graham, I have to do this myself. I have to prove that I can earn something, really earn it, not just have it handed to me. I understand, but can I give you some advice? Always. There's a difference between refusing help because you need to prove yourself and refusing help because of pride. If you genuinely need assistance, it's okay to accept it. The key is to accept it with gratitude and a plan to pay it forward, not with entitlement. She nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. I'll think about it. We finished cleaning, and as she was leaving, she handed me an envelope. This is this month's payment, plus a little extra. I got a bonus from the accounting firm for my work over the summer. Inside was $800. I tried to hand $200 back. You should save this for DePaul. She shook her head firmly. No, Graham. I made a commitment. This is important to me. I watched her drive away, this determined young woman who had emerged from the wreckage of her own mistakes. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Pride, sadness for what we'd lost, hope for what we were building. October arrived with falling leaves and Halloween decorations appearing on porches. Marcus and Yolanda invited me to go pumpkin picking with them and the kids at a farm outside the city. Patricia and Glenn came too, making it a full family outing. Bethany joined us, taking a break from studying for her midterms. We wandered through the pumpkin patch, the kids running ahead while the adults walked more slowly, enjoying the crisp autumn air. At one point, Patricia and I found ourselves walking together, slightly apart from the others. I've been thinking a lot about mom guilt, Patricia said suddenly. What do you mean? I mean the guilt of wondering where I went wrong. I gave Bethany everything, and somehow that turned out to be the problem. But then I see Marcus's kids, and they turned out great. So was it me? Did I mess up? You didn't mess up, I said. You loved your daughter and wanted to give her a better life than you had. That's not wrong. You just learned, like all parents do eventually, that there's a difference between giving your kids what they need and giving them everything they want. When did you learn that? Probably when I had to say no to you and Marcus about things because I couldn't afford them. I hated it at the time. But looking back, those no's taught you the value of yes. Patricia smiled sadly. Bethany's first real no came from you. Maybe that's what she needed all along, someone who loved her enough to let her fail. We walked in silence for a while, watching Bethany chase after Devin and Michaela, laughing like she was a kid again. She's going to be okay, I said. We all are. I hope so, Mom. I really hope so. November brought the anniversary of the dinner where everything had changed. None of us mentioned it explicitly, but I know we all thought about it. Bethany had now paid back $4,000 of the original debt. She was ahead of schedule on her payment plan, thanks to her summer internship and careful budgeting. But more importantly, our relationship had evolved into something real. We weren't back to where we'd been before. That innocent grandmother-granddaughter relationship was gone forever. But we had something different now, something built on honesty and hard-won respect. On Thanksgiving, we all gathered again at Marcus's house. This time, there was no tension, no careful navigation of difficult topics. We were just a family, imperfect but intact, sharing a meal and our gratitude. When it came time to say what we were thankful for, Bethany went first. I'm thankful for second chances, she said, her voice steady, and for grandmothers who love you enough to let you face consequences. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She looked at me across the table, and I nodded, blinking back tears. Around the table, everyone shared their gratitude. When it was my turn, I said, I'm thankful for my family, for their growth, their resilience, and their willingness to do the hard work of healing. And I'm thankful for the reminder that it's never too late to change, to grow, to become better versions of ourselves. Glenn raised his glass, to second chances and new beginnings. We all clinked glasses, and in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not hope that everything would be perfect. I knew better than that now, but hope that we would all continue growing, learning, becoming better.